not to get too close.
Welcome to our latest episode of the Lebanese Physicians Podcast. And today we will be, the podcast title is AI Horizons, Transforming Healthcare and Navigating Ethical Frontiers. And our guest is Luna Maroun, actually who has a background in engineering at the American University of Beirut, then studied innovations and technology at Stanford University, and finally did her MBA at MIT recently before moving over to work for Adobe in San Francisco. And one thing we're going to discuss today is when she was at MIT is when the AI revolution was starting and ChatGPT was starting. So welcome Luna, to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Khalil. So excited to join you today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining me. So basically, I mean, it's very exciting times now. Like you see AI, it's transforming, I mean, everything. Even maybe like when I was in San Francisco last week, there were like driverless cars,
Right.
all this stuff. Pretty scary times, but pretty exciting times too at the same time. So can you tell me a bit about how you decided to join MIT after Stanford and about your days at MIT, especially with the technology revolution ongoing at that time?
Right. Yeah. As you mentioned, like I feel like in the past 2 to 3 years, like so much has happened in AI, but it was a topic that was present, like AI research and development started back in the 70s. But it was really like around 2019 that like a new paper on like how transformers would work and how transformers can enable like generative AI that really unleashed all these new applications that we see now, like the chat GPT application, the LLMs, the image generation, and so much has been unlocked. And that was a really interesting time for me because like moving into Boston, into MIT, like super close to healthcare, super close to AI, at such a big like tech school was really interesting. And yeah, back then I really wanted to work more in tech and really think more about what would be the real world application of this AI development. And it was a pretty interesting time to be on campus there, and happy to share more about like the different research and healthcare AI that I was exposed to. And yeah, I really wanted to work more on that and really push more like the next generation of products. Like right now, we're looking at products in a very different lens than we used to a few years back. So I really wanted to work at that frontier and be able to make impact using products that could be transcend around the world. So yeah.
Yes, so could you tell us? I mean, did you imagine that the AI revolution was going to be that fast when you joined MIT? And number two, what did you work on in terms of projects at MIT that probably we know of right now? Some of them probably are like in the market right now.
Yeah, I think like the AI acceleration has been faster than anyone could predict. Like even the biggest mind in computer science were like, oh, until the time we see like a Gen AI model is going to be like another 10 years and so on. And things have been moving way faster than anyone could expect. And now we're talking about AGI, artificial general intelligence, like really having full automation, agents doing decisions on their own. So I feel like things definitely are moving way faster than anyone could think. Like the first errors in the models that we were seeing, like the AI hallucination and the 3.0 GPT model, is now not anymore relevant. Like these margins of errors are being closed, and we're bridging that gap very, very quickly. And right now we have almost perfect models, right? Like this is not anymore something that is on top of people's mind. Now people are thinking more about AI agents and so on and how to bring it to the real world. And yeah, during my time at MIT, it was pretty exciting to collaborate and work with all the research that is happening on campus. And there are particularly interesting applications in healthcare. Happy to start talking about that, but really how much AI was able to unlock across like the value chain of health tech, starting from the diagnosis to how hospitals should triage their patients and so on. So it was really interesting. Like there was a lot of projects that was involved in building models that could actually like make very accurate prediction, classify radiology, things of this sort. And yeah, happy to chat more about this in details.
Yeah, great. And which brings me, yeah, so that's what I wanted to discuss actually, because we're a basically healthcare podcast. Uh,
Yeah.
So basically, there's been a rise of AI in healthcare, and what do you think? I mean, looks like AI. I mean, from what I see, it's revolutionizing diagnostics, patient care, medical research, and a lot of other things. But what do you think are the most promising applications of AI in healthcare today? And probably you've been involved in some of them, I guess, at MIT.
Right. So many of them. So I'd like to think about it like it's like the biggest impact is happening. Like healthcare is such a big word, right? Like
Right.
healthcare includes like personal healthcare, right? How someone would manage their day-to-day healthcare before getting to the doctor. It also involves like anything related to like hospitals, operations, so on. It also involves how doctors treat their patients, how they access information, and so on. So I think like these are maybe the three biggest impacts how AI is being translated. One in personal healthcare, right? So right now, people have access to much more like trackers, right? Like the Whoop, the Apple Watch, the Oura rings. All of these are giving people so much access to data and insights on their health. And what does that mean? And like right now, maybe people are accessing like health, fitness, vital signs, things of this sort. But the potential of that is really to reduce a lot of the stress that the healthcare system and the doctor face, right? We know, like here in the US, we have around less even than 300,000 doctors, right? Assuming every doctor is working 8 hours per day, only seeing patients, they're not doing any admin work, which is a big part of their work, and so on. That brings us to like 600 million hours of primary healthcare dedicated to patients, right, per year. We have like 300 million population here. So that means like each person is accessing at best and definitely less than 2 hours of primary healthcare per year, hours, right, with a doctor. So there is definitely that constraint there. And all of these like health trackers, that revolution in personal health and what AI is enabling there is definitely going to reduce a lot of that stress that is coming to like the healthcare system and to the doctors. And what that would mean is early diagnosis of symptoms, helping the patient be able to manage their early symptoms, being able to wait like a week or two until they can see their primary healthcare doctor, right? So all of these are super interesting enablements that AI right now is going to be able to give to patients because it has access to their data and it will be able to give them like very clear nudges, early predictions of symptoms, how to manage until they get to see their doctors, and help us like really. And I believe like definitely like the COVID pandemic showed us how much like the healthcare system can be immediately and very shortly under stress, right? Like just a little bit of spike in the cases admitted, it can really overflood the system. So this is a very big, I think, revolution for AI, enabling people to manage very basic healthcare diagnosis, management of symptoms, so on, until they get to see their doctor, because we have here big capacity constraints, right? The second area I think that is truly very revolutionary is really around diagnosis, right? And we see a lot of research that's coming out from all institutions. The stuff that I'm familiar with are like from MIT, like there are like these, now they created like those deep learning models that can actually detect skin cancer at super, super early stage. They just feed it training on millions of radiographies, on scans, on blood tests, everything that would be an early detection of that cancer. And then the next time they feed it with like a patient data, it can actually make a prediction if that is a really, really early stage of cancer or not. So really being able to make AI, make this computer think and see like a doctor, right? This is one. The other thing, the other research that is also super interesting is, I love it. I love that research is around like breast cancer. So, and I love the title of that research. It's breast cancer do not kill. It's late detection of breast cancer that kills, right? We know that identifying and being able to predict like breast cancer at stage one, there is a 99% chance of survival in 5 years, right? Like this is nearly negligible. This is amazing. But if a cancer is detected at stage four, that technically drops to 33%. And like it's truly a problem of early detection. It's not a problem of, that cancer, breast cancer is that you know, is that hard to treat. It's about like being able to get the patient on the treatment as early as possible when they are closer to the earlier stages. And with AI, with all of these data, all of these patient tests being fed to these models and helping the doctor kind of see through this huge amount of information, you know, and being able to filter through that and help them go through these thousands and thousands and thousands of patients is something really revolutionary in that space. Um, Also, we can deep dive more, but just giving at first like a kind of a glance of the situation. And lastly, like I think hospitals and the way they triage their patients, the way they manage bed capacity, the way they manage like, okay, so are we over flooded or are we good on capacity and so on? And as a doctor, you probably know how much like that balance is pretty hard to strike, right? Like sometimes you're ready to dispense a sick patient, but then suddenly they relapse, right? Then you have to readmit them, and all of that creates so much. And AI will be able like to really help hospitals kind of filter through these cases and better plan, you know, like their beds capacity, their doctor shifts, and all of this that comes with it.
Right. Yeah. So basically, if we talked about it, I think I can add another one, but then another one would be in procedures too. Maybe like
Right,
streamlining procedures, like we do robotic bronchoscopies. It's just like getting better and better at reaching the lung nodules or treating the lung nodules in that case. But what you're saying is there's three big categories. One is potentially diagnostic, right?
right.
Aiding in diagnosis. Number two is screening, maybe like aiding in screening or detecting early cancers. Number three is data, generating a lot of data such as blood sugars for patients, vital signs, all this stuff to figure out what's going on with the patients. And number four is potentially streamlining processes. Not only hospitals, I think I see it also maybe clinics, like clinic appointments, trying to get patients in into the appointments that are needed to for them to get in, and maybe even aiding in submitting forms to insurance companies and stuff like that in that case.
Exactly, 100%, yeah.
And I mean, this is, I guess, huge. So do you think, I mean, the question for you is when you get that much data, that's what I get scared of. You're getting all this data. Do you think this improves patient outcomes, or could it just overflood the system with data that you don't know what to do with it? And people may start missing stuff because of that.
Right. And that's I think what usually like scares doctor of using AI because they're like I feel the stakes of making a bad decision in that sector is pretty high, right?
Right.
It's not like using an AI agent to, I don't know, place an Instacart order and then the order arrives the second day and you're like out of eggs for a day. Like it's like the stakes of the decision and making a mistake there is pretty big, right? Telling a doctor to discharge a patient or predicting that this patient is not going to have a stroke while actually they are going to have a stroke is is very big. So, and I feel that's where like the trust of doctors and of the healthcare system in AI comes from the stake, like the high stake of the decisions that are made. And I think right now, like a lot of companies are developing a way of AI where it's not anymore a black box as much as it's a kind of, they call it a glass box. And what that means is like when you feed it, let's say you're a doctor and you wanted to help you understand this patient history. They just came to your office, and instead of like browsing through tens and tens of papers and documents and the random like blood tests from 2018 and whatever, you just like ask your chat box, be like, yeah, summarize the patient data for me. And then the chat box is like, oh, you are dealing here with a very high risk person of diabetes. Let's say that that's the outcome of that. You will be like, at first, it will throw you off. You would be like, okay, but like that's such a big thing. Like that's gonna change what I'm gonna prescribe to them, the way I'm gonna treat them, and so on. And I don't feel confident with this outcome because it was just like literally an input. You asked it for a question, and then it came out to you with a very strong outcome. What now the industry is trying to create is to kind of guide doctors through this process. Instead of being like, oh, this patient is at a very high risk of diabetes, you need maybe to start discussing plans with them. They would be like, I looked at their blood test that is made in 2018 at their glucose level. And then I looked at another one that was made in 2020. And then I looked at another one that's made in 2022. And I see that trend. In addition, I see that, I don't know, maybe their cortisol level or anything else that's also coming into play is happening this and this and this. That's why I would say that this. And this is will guide you as a doctor instead of going through like the tens and tens of papers and documents and tests to know exactly where to look for that information and to enable you to process through that and reduce the cognitive load, right? Because seeing patients back to back, so on, like a lot of time also doctors make mistake in that, right? They like, I'm exhausted, like I missed that part of information, it just will help make you see what you need to see. And I think that's the empowerment that now AI needs to become much more useful in the healthcare system to guide doctors, to keep the agency, to keep the decision making with doctors, but just to guide them how to filter through information, how to look at the right type of things to make their decisions, and how to really read and interpret the information that they are seeing. But still, like the decision making, the interpretability should stay with doctors due to the high stake of the decisions that are being made.
Yes. No, I agree, and I think as you're talking through this, and we're starting to use it now for, let's say, lung
Mm,
nodules, because I'm a lung doctor, and typically we see lung lesions in patients, and a lot of times you get a scan, right? You look at the nodule,
right.
and then AI probably can aid you in saying, you know what, there was a scan in 2019 that showed this nodule to be 3 millimeters, then in 2022 it was 8 millimeters, and now it's 1 centimeter, and then you're like, oh my God, this is growing in size. We need to intervene and do something about it. While if I was doing it on my own, I might have missed the fact that there was maybe a scan done in 2019 and
Right.
would have had a wrong decision done. So basically, I'm still making decisions, but I'm making aided decisions by AI that may be better decisions than I would have made if I just depended on my cognitive load.
Exactly. Exactly. And yeah, right now, as you said, like there is a big concern of the amount of data that is being fed, being able to filter through everything and so on.
Yes.
And yeah, I feel like just keeping key decision points across that process of diagnosing, recommending a procedure or a certain medication or so on, keeping it with the doctor and just guiding them along the way is something really interesting. And yeah, I feel it's generally aligns with the overall trend of the industry of thinking about AI agents, right? Like you have multiple agents that are working for you, but at the end of the day, they're working for you. They're not making decisions on behalf of you. Trying to gather through the information. One of them is summarizing notes. The other one is looking at scans. The other one is looking at blood sugar. You know what I mean? And just bringing that back to you. So,
Yeah. So basically, you're still a decision maker. The question is that people get scared of, since we're discussing it.
mm,
San Francisco, right? We just discussed it. There's Waymo, and you're having these driverless taxi cabs. So now you have a taxi cab that
yeah.
drives people around, and it's pretty safe probably because it drives on the speed limit. It detects 360 degrees. It doesn't make mistakes, right? Because it learns as it drives. It's learning, and you don't need taxi drivers anymore. Is it the same eventually in healthcare? Like a dermatologist, maybe you would need a dermatologist to remove a lesion, but if you have a dermatology application that you were discussing before, which I think is out there already, telling you this is a diagnosis more accurate than if you go see a dermatologist, why do you need to go see a dermatologist? Maybe you reach a point where the application will do the diagnosis for you. What do you think of that?
So I think like the driving situation, and I worked on driverless cars here in SF. So
Okay.
the driving situation and like having self-driving cars is pretty unique because all of the stages of that process of driving can be automated, right? In a way. And still, by the way, like every Waymo that you get into, there is a shadow driver that is sitting in a center. And once you click your support, they take over the car from virtually, right? To maneuver it. And it's still applications in very, very specific cities, contained environments, like they are trained on San Francisco environment, right? They are trained on San Francisco map. Scaling it and taking that Waymo and throwing it in the middle of somewhere else, let's say in Beirut, it's gonna
Yeah.
be confused because the rules of driving there are very different, right? Like,
There's no rules, so it's very hard to get it. Yeah.
so, and I think like the healthcare sector, and let's say like the doctor example, is a different one. There are definitely stages and steps of the work of the doctor that can be automated. Definitely AI, like this margin of error is getting smaller, so their prediction of a certain tumor or of a certain disease or something like that is gonna get more and more accurate. But the question is, what do we do with it, right? Right? Like, what do we do with it? Like, once I am diagnosed, let's say, as a diabetes person, you need a doctor, right? You need a doctor to do procedure. You need a doctor to prescribe medications. You need a doctor to validate that diagnosis was done the right way, or like there are we missing something else, or there is something not in the data that we need to know about. Maybe it's just like your maybe it's just about like your patients telling you that, oh yeah, yesterday I was walking and I fell. And then you would know that, oh, that put some stress on the body and that spiked the cortisol or whatever. You know what I mean? Like there is still much more to it than just like feeding it into AI. But definitely it's kind of elevating the work and changing the type of work that doctors will do. Like I feel now doctors are gonna become more of managers rather than operators in a way. They are managing these different AI solutions that are doing the work for them instead of them going and scrolling and doing through the admin work and reading the documents and so on. They're going to become more managerials and they're going to elevate a little bit the type of work that they do. It's going to be more focused on judgment. It's going to be more focused on empathy, more on, like other more humane parts of the doctor work rather than just the cognitive and analyzing and processing things. And if we think about it, I feel like, yeah, like in the industry, when the industrial revolution happened before that, people were really working with their muscles, right? They were transporting goods, holding them, pushing like, carts, things like that. And when the Industrial Revolution happened, it kind of brought the car. Jobs changed. People lost their jobs. Yeah, like we're working differently now. We're not working anymore with our muscles. We're working with our brains, right? The type of work that we do became much more cognitive, much more focused on the brain. And right now, like, no doubt that AI is replacing part of that job that the brain is doing. So we're giving away one of those tasks, and that's a reality, right? But we are moving to a different level of task, more focused on judgment, on ethics, on empathy, on validating, on interpretability. And that's more of a managerial role rather than the previously operational, only analyzing role that a doctor would do. And yeah, it's a big change, and a lot of the functions and the roles that we see in hospitals are going to change. And people who are going to do it need to integrate new tools, new way of working, and so on. And that's going to be a big transformation.
Right, exactly. I mean, I can see it even in scheduling. Like if you have an AI assistant to schedule, it's going to be more streamlined, and you may not need as many schedulers anymore to do the task, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. And which could be a good thing, could be a bad thing for some people, but I think people will adapt to that. And I see it also in research. Maybe we didn't discuss research, but also in research, you can potentially do a statistical analysis using AI now, or tell it what's the best way to analyze the data, or how do I collect the data, and potentially even like have a database of data that the AI can analyze for you on the spot, such
Yeah.
as happening now in lung cancer screening, where you have all these lung nodules and they can be analyzed in terms of percentages of lung nodules, how many of them were cancer, how many of them needed procedures, all this stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, what are the ethical considerations, I guess, because who is accountable at the end of the day? If AI is helping you make that decision, if there's a mistake, there's a malpractice lawsuit, is a malpractice lawsuit against whatever the company that created the AI application, against Epic, let's say,
Yeah.
or is it against the doctor?
Uh, that's a very big topic because I feel like, yeah, the sector is moving way faster than regulations
Right.
and laws and policy is moving at. And yeah, we face like those challenges when some odd and extreme cases happen, right? An AI chat box was chatting with a teenage, and the teenager was not happy with their life and stuff like that. The AI prompted them to commit suicide. It's a true case, right?
Right.
Who is responsible, right? Like in that case, is it the developer of the AI? Is it, the parents who let it with? Like, is it I don't know, a ghost, like, and at this point, like the lawsuit is still going. And that is where we stress test our systems that we are not that ready from a policy and ethical and regulatory perspective for those limitation for those applications. I think eventually things is like the way, like I feel another set of application is gonna come out and another set of like products gonna come out that's gonna help trace responsibilities. Like I think that's a huge now sector where it's gonna be like, because still till today, how these large language models, how these deep learning models work is unknown, right? You feed it data, you train it, you never taught it, like you never expected it, that when you're gonna send like a text to it and you, I don't know, like in English and be like translate that to Chinese, you never taught it explicitly to learn Chinese, but randomly now AI is talking in Chinese. And once they go under the hoods of these models, they don't know how they work, right? It's like literally generative models. So, and there's a lot of research, new research areas called like that goes under like nerdy names like mechanistic interpretability and so on. And literally, their role is to go under the hoods of the model and try to see how the model made a decision. So I think that's going to be another area of work for people to figure out and create applications and solutions to be like, where did we fail in that decision? Is it that the AI made a wrong recommendation? Like in the case of the suicide of the teenage, it's clear. Like he was sitting with a chat box, they made the decision, right? It's clear. But once it's being communicated by a doctor, once there is an extra judgment from the doctor that's coming in, who holds accountability? And that's going to create a new set of solutions to be able to trace it back. But again, like creating like those nods along the way where doctors confirm that, okay, AI is not doing anything crazy, it's on track, having those guardrail metrics, is something really important. And since you brought up like the example of self-driving cars, that's also what they have in that industry, right? So, for example, like those cars are not allowed to do anything crazy. They're not allowed to drive at huge speed. They're not allowed to take a highway. They're not. This is where a human driver should come and take control because it's a high stake decision. Yeah, they are driving at 10 miles per hour on a small street. Whenever they see, like, they tend to be more conservative. Whenever they see, probably you've seen that, whenever they see like a stop sign or something like that, they overly conservative. They would wait for the pedestrian to finish crossing until they move. Versus like a human driver would, the moment they start moving, they will start accelerating, right? So they try to put like these extra conservative rules in the models. And I think same thing should be done for healthcare just to reduce the margin of error. And once things happen, this is where right now, like there is no clear framework to how we go about this and how we solve it, unfortunately.
Yeah, that was a good point you brought up with Waymo because when I was running in San Francisco, I was crossing a red light and I saw the Waymo car. I was like, if it turns green for it, would it keep going and hit me or will it stop even
It
though I'm crossing the
stops.
red light? It
It
stops.
stops. Yeah. And that's what I like. I love crossing streets when there is Waymo because they never honk, they never come close to me. I take my time. So yeah.
So, so how about, I mean, we talked about this. How about patient privacy? Like, I mean,
Mm,
if you're analyzing data, right, for Epic, let's say, or for Cerner, which are the
mm.
MR models, how about patient privacy and security? And maybe, I mean, you can probably make the case that if the patient privacy is not compromised in Epic, it shouldn't be compromised with an AI application related to Epic. But do you think that's a concern?
It's a big concern. And I think, yeah, when the first models came out, privacy and data privacy was a big concern. And healthcare and the financial sector, sharing people's social security number, like all of these things that you could think of. But right now, like again, new training ways have came out. And another like interesting research also from MIT is called like federated learning, which is really around, so we have a model that is being trained on healthcare in healthcare cases. We're not asking hospitals to provide their data to train on a central server. We rather provide the model to the hospital to train it on their local servers, right? So the hospital is getting the model, it's training it on patient data. Patient data is staying in the hospital. It's not leaving to any different server. And then only the updated and new metrics of the model, like because now the model got smarter. It got trained on 1 million of new user and patient data. Only the updated weights and metrics are sent back to the server, right? The patient data is staying local in the hospital. And this is called like federated learning, and this is protecting user and patient data. Another thing is like called differential privacy, which is adding some noise to the identities, right? Like in a way, like instead of like what we care about, we wanna correlate, or we wanna understand what is the relation between stress and stroke, right? Or something of this sort. And in the columns and in the data that is related to customer identification, IDs, numbers, social security numbers, passport numbers, all of this, we add noise. We add like random numbers just to make it anonymous, and then we train the models on that. So kind of like patient data is secure, like we cannot trace it back. Who is this person who has these type of vital data and stuff like that, but we are still training our model on those, because what we care about is like those correlations, those relations, right? So there are new like research methods that are kind of creating some privacy for patients, and I think more applications and more research is going to be done on that, because big concern for hospitals, for doctors, is the privacy of their customers and patients. Yeah.
Right, exactly, and yeah, that makes me feel better because like it's learning from your patients that you have, but it's not getting the information. It's not going to a cloud. The information stays
Right.
needs to belong and doesn't go to a cloud.
And that will protect it. That's because like right now, like if you know that the patient data is staying in the hospital, because also think about it, like what's the main concern of transferring data between servers is like much more exposure to cybersecurity threats. Like now if you hack a startup of 10 people, like storing their server, storing like all of the hospitals of the US data on their server. Maybe they didn't go through all the, cybersecurity checks and stuff like that. Hacking that is such a big thing, right? And you keep getting these notification, oh, your data has been compromised and so on. That's why patient data should stay local in the hospital, but the model should be federated and trained at the local level without messing with the data.
Is it
So,
similar to, I'm trying to think about it, is this similar to like putting your credit cards on Apple Pay? So
right?
your credit card is with you, but when you put it in Apple Pay, there's no access to the credit card number, I guess, the people that hackers.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, I'm understanding stuff. Thanks, Luna. And and then I mean, I think we can talk forever, but one more thing that's important, I think, is like healthcare disparities. Uh,
Mm.
Especially now, I think there's a lot of talk with what's going on of like people losing their insurance and all this stuff. Do you think AI can assist in addressing disparities in healthcare among patients of different backgrounds?
So you mean like making it more accessible or?
More accessible and more fair to people.
Mm. Yes, I think that's an interesting, like, I think there is an interesting case in finance that you can think about it. Same thing for healthcare, was that, like how the finance sector here works in the US. Like, if I am applying today for a mortgage or for a loan or for whatever, they literally, the systems, or for a new credit card or whatever, the bank system will look at very specific little things in my profile, which is, oh, my credit score, oh, my age, oh, my income, and then decide if they're gonna give me this or not. What they don't know is that I moved to the US like 3 years ago. I didn't have a credit score, right? I didn't have a US credit card. I was a student. I didn't have an income, but I had savings, but they didn't look at savings, right? And they made a decision, let's say, not to give me a credit card. And this is a false decision. What they need to do is like integrate more things and making it more humane. Because if I was talking to a representative at the bank, they would have understood a little bit more my situation. They would have understood that, like I'm gonna be employable, I'm gonna be able to find a job once I graduate, and so on, right? So the same thing applies in healthcare. A lot of time, insurance deny people to renew their healthcare because, oh, you're at a high risk. But actually, it's more about making and be able to customize healthcare plans to each person's situation. Because if someone, let's say at some point, I don't know if this is the example you're referring to, but just correct me if I'm wrong. But let's say if someone was suddenly got diagnosed with a very expensive disease to treat, and then the healthcare decided that, okay, this is a very expensive patient for us to have on our plans, right? We cannot let those people out of the healthcare system, especially in a country like the US where healthcare is privatized. Like you have to pay for your healthcare. It's not like a common social thing provided by the government. You need to create more categories. You need to be able to account to those people. And I think AI will enable that because it will help you really estimate what would this patient cost you? How will they, retain and tenure within your system? When will they die? Like as dark as it sounds, but like if someone is diagnosed with a very severe thing, they might be out of your healthcare system faster, right? All of these things that right now are not accounted for. I feel like AI could help have a more holistic understanding of a patient situation and the type of care that they would receive. And second, help in like pricing it, creating a customized plan for them. Where would those patients fit under, right? So it should bring more equity. Right now on the ground, I think there is still a gap that we need to bridge. But ideally, like AI will have the capacity and capability to support in those decisions as well.
Yeah, and what I'm seeing too, or the other part, so yeah, basically it's equity in terms of like getting health insurance and tailoring the health insurance to the person, because sometimes you may be buying more health insurance if you're very healthy. You might not need to pay that much for your health insurance, and somebody else might need to. But the other part of it, I think too, is maybe like access to care. Let's say if you maybe follow patients who don't come to their doctor, uh,
Mm,
or give them more data, like somebody with asthma who doesn't come, maybe you can monitor them from
yes.
afar and make sure they're taking their inhaler. Right,
And there is a clear here, like I feel there are also, I remember there was a lot of economical studies that shows that the less income people have and the less wealth they have, the less they are aware about their health, right? The
right,
less they are like, oh, I feel some
right,
pain on my hip.
right,
It's fine. I'm busy. I have to show up to my work. I need to meet my ends. I cannot miss a day because I get paid daily. You know what I mean? And people start lagging behind, in those decisions. Same thing if someone is, and I think here, like in SF, like you see everyone who have a health tracker thing and running and doing all of these activities. And like if they start feeling the tiny little thing of symptom, they would immediately check with their uh, doctor because they also have the privilege to be able to think about their healthcare, right? It
right,
became a headspace. The headspace allows it. So a lot of tools, and this is, I think, it's going to be very challenging, especially in countries like the US, which are more driven by capitalism and so on, to see how we can provide that equity. What are the tools that are going to really be able access to healthcare for the people that need it most, for the people that are seeing the symptoms and are ignoring it because they have much more day-to-day worries on their minds, right?
right. Exactly, exactly. And we'll see. This is going to be interesting stuff. And finally, let's say we fail because we talked about laws lagging behind the technology. And what if we fail to establish ethical guidelines of AI in healthcare? What's going to happen?
It's gonna be horrible. We're gonna, I think the good thing is like at this moment, we still have like, that big red light to stop things. It's still in your hand as a doctor to decide to use it or not to use it,
Right,
right? It's still in your hand to be like, okay, like I've been hearing from my doctor friends and from the hospitals, and I've been reading articles that it's making very bad decisions. It's making bad judgments. People are making more mistakes because of it. You decide not to use it. So I think we're still at the point where it's still up to each person in their job to make the decision to use it or not to use it. I think at the pace of how things move, if something revolutionary comes out, which is an AGI agent for healthcare, which is a very autonomous decision-making AI system that have agency even to act. It has the agency to even tell the customer or immediately discharge them, make the process in the system pick everything, send a message to their family, be like, oh yeah, your family, your father is being discharged today, and then you come pick them up. And they made the decision based on stuff and they made the wrong decision. This is huge. But right now, I don't think we're yet at the point where AI is being given that agency. It's still a support to doctors.
Right, right.
And there is still some agency and some mechanisms to prevent that at the moment. Like, you know, but yeah, but I feel like the future is much more brighter than that. Like I truly feel it's gonna empower, it's gonna extend, it's gonna help you instead of seeing like 10 patients per day, it's gonna help you see 15 because now you can skim through their files much faster. You can make sure that they have a bot that will monitor their things. They will not be forgetting, their important things, and they're gonna have a bot that's gonna tell them to watch for these symptoms. It's gonna remind them, like you will feel more empowered. I hope so. Like, and I hope the future is brighter and more optimistic than,
No, I
than
agree exactly, and
yeah,
I think that, Luna, this was great. I think, and I think, I mean, we discussed it. We discussed AI. I think people are obviously very scared of it. Like they were, like we talked about, it's like the industrial revolution. Like people were scared at that time, but then
right,
jobs adapted to the new situation. And I feel like you. I feel that it's probably going to be something, from what I understand, from what we discussed, it's going to be something that would assist us in making, maybe being more efficient and making
right.
better decisions, and maybe even following protocols and even guiding us to produce more research that's more accurate and faster than before. So hopefully that's going to be the future. And Luna, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Khalil.
Thank
Enjoyed the conversation.
thank you. Me too.